You are Locked On Wolves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Ugly. Not the way you want to bring in 2026 if you're the Wolves. Putrid display today against the Hawks in Atlanta, 126-102. That's your final. What's going on back in the lab? Back at it. Another T-Wolves POSTCAST right here, all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Now the #1 sports podcast network. That's Jack Borman, Wolves expert, NBA expert. Give him a follow on X at JRBorman13. Luke Inman at Luke_Spinman. Gotta follow our guy, Ben Beacon, as well, host of the Locked On Timberwolves show. Remember to like and subscribe to keep up with all the action. Lots to get into here, Jack. Lot to digest here. Who fudged up the most? What are we already kind of second guessing from that performance? But just off the top, man, think about it. Wolves coming in off that win in Chicago, trying to build a little momentum here. Can you make it 2-3 wins in a row at any point on this 4-game road trip? Atlanta, meanwhile, losers of 7 straight. No Trae Young today as well. So I'm thinking on paper, should be a cupcake, man, but obviously not the case with this team. Putrid effort right out the gate. Micah Nori called it the worst first half of basketball they've been a part of in the 5 years they've been here. So strong words by the coaching staff there. And the second half really wasn't a whole lot better either. Hawks assist to turnover ratio, I know you'll get into that. That thing was outrageous. Wolves basically had no spark defensively all game. Outside of Ant's 32 points, nobody really found any offensive rhythm. So all in all, just a putrid performance again by the Wolves today on New Year's Eve. 126-102, that's your final. 21-13 now on the year. Kick us off, man. Big picture reaction before we get into kind of the meat and potatoes.
Yeah, I think we were looking back at that Chicago game and we're hoping that could have been a positive inflection point, right? In the sense that the bench really played very well early on in the game. Julius Randle was phenomenal, 14 assists, 0 turnovers. And it felt like that game, along with the win over Oklahoma City at home a couple Fridays ago, both seemed more like outliers than anything else. And what has just felt like a very stale month of December, despite the Timberwolves having a winning record of like 9-5 in December so far. And then you nailed it with what Mike Nori said. I think, you know, he sounded like a coach that was trying to compose himself after they just tore into guys at halftime. And it seemingly worked for a few minutes there at the start of the third quarter before the Wolves just totally backslid into significant lapses of concentration, lack of heart, not hustling, not getting any 50-50 balls that they were coming up with seemingly every time in Chicago. And it just looked like a team that was thinking more about their New Year's Eve plans, whether it was in Atlanta or Miami coming up here, than a team that had interest in playing basketball. And it's just really hard to take a team seriously, you know, 2 Western Conference Finals appearances or not, when the effort and connectivity waxes and wanes as aggressively from game to game as it does for the Timberwolves. And I think when you're struggling to find motivation coming off of those back-to-back Western Conference Finals appearances, it's fine if you have one stinker over the course of 3 weeks or a month or whatever the case may be. But it just is happening far too often, especially against teams that are inferior opponents and missing star players, like so many of the teams that the Wolves have played this month half. When you think about playing the Knicks without Jalen Brunson, that was a slow game. The Bucks without Giannis, playing Memphis without Ja Morant, playing Sacramento without Sabonis, playing Phoenix without Devin Booker. I mean, there's just so many different games that you can point to where they haven't looked good, even in wins, from not taking opponents seriously. And that's just a huge bummer. And it's especially a bummer when you consider that the Timberwolves' best player was one of the guys that brought really good energy to this game for the most part. I mean, Anthony Edwards in that first half scored 24 points really efficiently, despite getting high-walled and blitzed for the entirety of that half. And he ended up with 30 points in 33 minutes on very efficient 10 of 18 shooting, and had 3 of the Wolves' 11 stocks in this game. So I don't really think that you can blame Ant for what happened today at all. I just think that, again, for the Wolves offensively, it's super disappointing that they're held to a season low 102 points against a team that has come coming off of a 5-game stretch where they've given up 133 points a game and have had 0 games that have been really remotely close. And I just think that it's pretty an inexcusable performance, and I think caps off what has been just a wholly disappointing month, despite the record, considering the hopes, I guess, that we had for the Timberwolves this season. And I think it just sounds off alarm bells that when a team again feels stale, like this Timberwolves team does, and that might be being a little generous, frankly. I just don't know what internal solutions you have, and I don't get paid to make those decisions, thankfully, and because I don't envy the people who do. But something's got to give, and I think it's going to be a really interesting next month plus for Tim Connolly and his front office, and how they decide to approach kind of rectifying the pretty obviously untenuous situation that they have right now.
We always got a tight schedule here. I don't want to go too far off the rails. I'm just curious, though. Last year, we started, like 18-18, 20-20, 17-7, something like that, right? Right now, obviously a much better record, 7 games over 500 still. What similarities, if any, do you see from last year's team around this time of year to this year's team? And anything that you still like, as bad as this performance was, better than last year's team, or any glaring weaknesses or things that you just feel even worse, I guess, than you did compared to last year's team? Again, around this point of the season, if you can remember.
Yeah, I think it's it's pretty hard to remember the exact issues. I think the
Sure.
lack of connectivity offensively, and just the way that that team took a while to kind of gel and figure things out,
Yep.
playing with one another certainly is rearing its head again. But again, I mean, this is a team that has played a ton of minutes relative to the rest of the NBA in terms of having all of their best players available, having their preferred starting lineup. I think more than any other team in the NBA this season. And the starting lineup has been mostly good on paper. Don't get me wrong when you look at the entirety of the sample size, but I still think the peaks and valleys from game to game is just really tough, and it's not as simple as just guys making or missing shots, right? I think it's lazy turnovers, not making an entry pass that has any zip on it, not understanding tendencies of their own teammates, and clogging the lane with bad cuts that kind of screw up, whether it's a Randall post up on the block or Ant driving lane, or Rudy purposely trying to space in the dunker, and then a cutter just kind of collapsing that spacing and forcing Ant or Randall to take a kind of contested mid-range jump shot. I think it's just those types of things that are frustrating. And I think as well, you've had just lapses of, I think, really just defensive concentration and effort that are born out of struggles on the offensive end of the floor. And I understand that it's much more difficult to play defense when the other team is playing off of stops and is able to generate pace better, able to generate cross matches and all those sorts of things. But at the end of the day, it's just a pride thing more than anything. And it really only looked to me like there were 2 guys on the Timberwolves that played with any amount of pride today. And that was Anthony Edwards and Dante DiVincenzo. And that's just a huge bummer.
Uh-oh, somebody messed up, and it's time to let them know with Who Fudged Up.
All right, who fudged up in a blowout like that? I'm sure you could go a plethora of different options here, Jack. But what's at the top of your mind right now when it comes to who fudged that game up the most?
Yeah, for me, it's hard to pin it on any one player. I think that you've got to really the entire main rotation. Nobody brought enough juice to lift them over the top in this game. And, the other part of it is I can't see the huddles on TV. That's one thing that I do have the luxury of being able to see from my media seat at Target Center. And I have no idea how these guys aren't tearing into one another for the way that they've played with no heart and no effort for continued stretches over some of these games. And especially against a team that's coming off of losing 7 games in a row. And I think Kristaps Porzingis is a really effective player. He's a plus 22 in 17 minutes, but I don't think that him coming back off the bench after missing 10 games with an illness just solves their defense. And again, the Timberwolves gave up 64 points in the paint. They're minus 28 in the paint to a team that has been dead last in terms of points in the paint differential their last 5 games, minus 14 points per game. And they're allowing 64 points in the paint per game over their last 5, and the Timberwolves turn around and allow 64 plus for the second time in 3 games. I mean, that just shows an unbelievable, in my opinion, an unbelievable lack of concentration and just willingness to get down in a stance. Like, if you're just paying attention to what's going on when you have Rudy Gobert on the court as someone off the ball, whether you're Julius Randle or Naz Reid or Anthony Edwards, all 3 of whom have been really inconsistent off the ball this year. I mean, it's hard to give up that many points in the paint when you have Rudy Gobert out there. And sure, I think Rudy could have been better in this game. Don't get me wrong. But I mean, like, Rudy can't just save everything when guys aren't getting in a stance and guarding on the perimeter and just letting guys get wherever they want to go on the bounce. And so that was terrible. And then Julius Randle's getting paid almost $31 million a year. And if I was getting paid $31 million a year, I would show up to work in with a great attitude and want to work really hard. And it just seems like Julius Randle, like, heart and hustle is just like optional for him on a game-to-game basis. Like, I sat here the other night and said that Randle was fantastic the other night against Chicago. And he was terrible the game before that. And it just seems like this snip, snap every other game situation for Randle in terms of playing with any modicum of effort as a defender and as a rebounder would really frustrate me if I was one of his teammates. And by all accounts, Julius Randle is a great dude. Mm-hmm. And I don't doubt that whatsoever. And it's not about, it's not personal or anything like that, but like, on a certain level, like, you just have to, like, I don't know, like, this is a problem pretty much at every single stop that he's been at. And it was part of the reason why so many Knicks fans soured on him by the time that he was on his way out of New York. And that's not to erase all the good that Julius Randle's done in a Timberwolves uniform. Because, I mean, the Timberwolves won that series against the Warriors in large part because of him dominating a matchup with Draymond Green. Mm-hmm. But, like, it is, I'll be nice to say it's just a bummer that version of Julius Randle has been there for maybe 40% of the games, 50% of the games this season, rather than 70 or 75% of the games that you'd expect from a star level player getting paid that much money. And as a guy who we thought was playing at an all NBA level for the first month of the season. And I just think it's been a really unfortunate downturn. And then lastly, Jaden McDaniels took 3 shots in the first half. He's supposed to be your third option, on some nights even your second option as a scorer. And he's so talented as a scorer. And especially when Ant's getting high walled and is attracting all the attention that he was in this game, he has to find a way to be more aggressive. Mm-hmm. And he's done a much better job this year of just catching the ball and going or shooting rather than just kind of sitting in the corner and kind of letting him take himself out of the game in a sense. And again, he did a better job in the second half, made a couple of threes, which was nice to see. But again, you just need more of that earlier on in games. And I think far too often, people just give Jaden a pass for his lack of offensive production because other guys have the ball. And I think Jaden can influence that. And I think his teammates need to realize also, hey, we need to get this guy the ball as well. So just the entire main rotation. We can get into the bench, but I mean, it was more about the starters today.
Yeah, well said there. Plenty more deep dive, including what we'll be second guessing the most from this one. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, today's episode brought to us by Monarch Money. You ever go check your bank account and go, where'd my money go? Dining out, online shopping, entertainment. So easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's not just another budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, all your investments, all your spending. It's all in one place. So you stop just managing your money. Instead, you start building some wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com. You're getting 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA. You're getting half off your entire first year. This episode also brought to us by Prize Picks. Without a doubt, most fun I have playing daily fantasy. You can win up to 25 times your money this NBA season. Why I love it. So easy to play. All you got to do, select 2 or more players. You pick more or less on their projected stats. Could be points, rebounds, assists, 3-pointers, you name it, they got it. Plus, they now offer Apple Pay, quick and easy deposits into your account all season long. Right now, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That's promo code LockedOnNBA at prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. 100% bonus match up to $100. All right, Jack, before we get into what we'll be talking about, I want to know what you think we should be second guessing the most effort.
Since hindsight is always 20/20, let's deliver today's second guess.
I mean, after a blowout like that, only natural to second guess some things here, Jack. But what was it today as you watched this one play out the most?
Yeah, I think today is kind of a good example of why I think it's easy to see why some of the younger guys, namely guys kind of like Josh Minot, haven't necessarily been the biggest fans of Chris Finch, in the sense that outside of Ant and Dante, like nobody's playing with any energy in this game. You're down 25 in the first half. What do you have to lose by turning to Leonard Miller or Johan Berenger for like 5 minutes just to see if they'll play with effort, right? These are guys that have, been playing, have both paid their dues, have both been in Iowa, both play hard in practice and are both guys that are really well liked inside the locker room. I don't know what you have to lose by running those guys out for 5 minutes. Like I would have much rather seen 5 minutes of Leonard Miller if he's going to play hard than, if Jaden McDaniels isn't going to guard anybody and isn't going to be aggressive offensively, like, or if Julius Randle is going to, play like, it's a preseason game. I don't know why Chris Finch isn't willing to at least, send the guys a message and just say like, hey, if you're not going to play hard, I'm going to go try to find anybody who will. And that's what I have a lot of respect for, like Steve Kerr. That's what Steve Kerr does on a night where guys don't have it. He's like, all right, you're not playing a second shift if you're going to bring this type of energy to the game. And I'm going to, go deep into my bench and play like Pat Spencer, Will Richard, Trace Jackson Davis, Guy Santos, those types of guys, because he just wants to find guys that are going to play hard. And I think, you could add in here that, that Tim Connolly hasn't really drafted any surefire rotation caliber guys in his tenure in Minnesota. But at the same time, like, it's hard to know because, Chris Finch has just been unwilling to play younger guys at a rate that's more in line with some of these other coaches around the league, even if it's for 5-10 minutes, on this night or that night, just to see what they might be able to give you. And I respect and understand that the Timberwolves have a pretty defined top end of the rotation, but at the same time, like, go look at like what the Knicks are doing. I know the Knicks have a couple of injuries to Deuce McBride and Landry Shamet, but you have guys like Kevin McCullough that are coming out and playing, or Mo Diawara that are coming out and playing. And they're finding out what they're having in some of these guys. And I think it's unfortunate. And at the same time, I do feel bad for Chris Finch, only in the sense that it really does seem like this locker room doesn't really have guys who are playing in the rotation that want to hold each other accountable in a meaningful way. And that also includes Anthony Edwards, right? I think that, you rarely see Ant getting on his teammates. And that's in part why so many of his teammates love him, because he's a positive, fun-loving guy. But at the same time, like, I would love it if Ant just like tore into any of his teammates because they weren't bringing it. Or conversely, if Ant wasn't bringing it, I would love if one of them tore into him just to show that they care. And I think that's what Timberwolves fans want to see right now, that, they just want to see a team that really cares. And I think that's why Timberwolves fans really started to fall in love with like that team a few years ago that went to, that lost to Memphis in the first round, like, and the team that went to the Western Conference Finals a couple of years ago. Like, both those teams just played super hard, and you had guys held people accountable, like with Kyle Anderson and, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Like, those are two guys that would hold guys accountable and just played super hard every night. Mm-hmm. And that type of stuff matters. And the Wolves just feel like they don't have guys like that on their team. And I think it's really difficult to make a really deep run without that on your team, if your coach has to be the guy that's constantly tearing into guys and trying to find a way to motivate guys. And so that's certainly got to be tough for Finch. But hey, they did it last year, so why can't they do it again this year? It's just, it feels like it's hit a breaking point.
This is what you'll be talking about.
All right. As you kind of pointed out, Wolves fans, especially in the chat right now, going off as far as maybe this team needs a shake up, whether that's at the head coaching spot or just some moves at the deadline. I want to be too prisoner of the moment here after such a pathetic loss here, Jack, because it is only one game. But where's your heart and your head say right now as far as the status of this team moving forward, talking about trade deadline and beyond?
Yeah, I in no way think that the Timberwolves should fire Chris Finch right now, or should really entertain that until the end of the season. At the very least, with him being by far the most successful coach in franchise history, he's earned every benefit of the doubt, in my opinion. I just think that this team needs roster shakeup, and I think, again, I said it kind of off the top of the show, that it's really difficult when things feel stale. Sometimes it's like a relationship, right? Like, if a relationship feels really stale, it's just really hard to find a fix without doing something different. And I think that for this Wolves team, it's just hard to find any fixes without making change that comes externally in the form of a different player, different players, plural. And I think we're really going to find out how Tim Connolly is going to operate as a guy in the trade market, because this Wolves team has had a lot of success since he got here, and a lot of the guys that are on their current team right now have been really important to the success that they have had. And it won't be easy for him to make some of these trades, considering whose salaries you might need in order to accomplish that. So I'm really anxious to kind of see how he approaches it, because it's a really big next month for Connolly and his front office.
Great stuff per usual, Jack. T-Wolves, just a pathetic, disgraceful performance on New Year's Eve in Atlanta. 126-102, that's your final. 21-13 now on the year, still 8 games above 500. Much love to all you guys, though, all the everydayers out there that always make us your first listen. All you guys coming in the chat with us from game to game. You guys were on fire today, per usual. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. Go follow Jack as well, at Borman13. We'll catch you here Saturday evening. Wolves traveling to Miami, game 3 of 4 on this 4-game road trip, 4 p.m. tip. Until then, thanks for watching. Talk to you next time. Signing out.